Our Opel Astra has just failed spectacularly on its road inspection test. The good news is that the workshop that did the test has given us an offer to fix all the faults and pass the test. And the only catch is, it's going to cost us $2,800. Now I've checked, and like it sits now, without being road legal, it's worth barely $900. Now, with a pass test and the mileage that this car has, it would be worth around $2,300. So of course the most sensible thing would be to scrap it. The only problem with this is that we really need this car and we do not have enough money to buy a new one. So we are in a tight squeeze here. So I'm going to do something potentially really stupid here. I'm going to attempt to fix this car myself. The only problem with that is that that job involves changing out a rotten subframe, and I have no idea what I'm doing. What could possibly go wrong? This is a big problem. We have a problem. Tire radiator is actually completely loose. I don't think this is good anymore. And when it comes to this part, it actually just broke straight off. Let's take a look at the results of the inspection so we know what we have to work with. Norwegian State Road Department allow a car with only code 1 faults to pass. Code 2 means you get 2 months to fix it and take a new test. Code 3 faults means instant removal of license plates. This is our results. Front fog light right side is loose. Code 1. Front fog light right side, no light. Code 2. More than 25% rust on front brake disc inside both sides. Code 2. More than 50% rust on rear brake disc inside both sides. Code 2. Boiling point of brake fluid is too low. Code 2. Headlights are set too high. Code 2. Front bumper is loose. Code 2. So far the results is not that bad and fixing this looks manageable, but then came the last line. This is the biggest one and it have the possibility of turning this job into a nightmare. Corrosion hole in the front subframe. Code 2. Now the first thing we need to do is to order some parts. First off, we need new brake discs, both front and rear. Then we will need new brake pads, both front and rear. Every time I've tinkered with brakes because of rust, the brake shield is usually also garbage, so we will also get those. Since there's only rust on one side of the discs, the sliders is probably also bad, so we will buy new pins for them also. According to Google, low boiling point in the brake fluid means it's bad and need to be replaced, so we will get a new can. As the fog light was both loose, filled with water and generally not working, we will replace the entire light. And since I generally do not know what I'm doing, I think a workshop manual is a good idea too. Now, so far our budget is looking good, but now comes the big one. The subframe. I don't want to spend more than I have to on this car, so the plan is to go for a used one. This page have used parts from Norwegian cars that have been scrapped, and it is possible to do a bargain here, so I will go and ask on one of these. So all the new parts that we have ordered have arrived. And when I say new parts, I mean all new parts. So our intentions was to buy a used subframe for around $200, but it turns out that shipping from that place was around $150. But for $350 I could get a new one with shipping for $10. So in my mind the choice was easy. I went with a new one. It rains a lot where we live, and so my plan is to work in here. But newly laid gravel is not the best foundation to work on. Of course concrete would be better, but this is what I got. But I do have a plan, and it's in here. We are currently rebuilding this 100-year-old barn, and these floorboards are leftovers from that project. Now these would be perfect to lay down as a temporary floor in the farm shed. So let's go and get the tractor and make ourselves a floor. kind of took for granted that I could back the car in here, but this gap is not enough. Even if I take the mirrors in, I will still rip them off if I try. We have a problem. So when I just left the car now, I forgot to put on the handbrake, and it turns out that it rolled a bit backwards, and now I can't get the door open. This video is sponsored by Paradise Pause. Sometimes it's nice to just sit down and do something relaxing, like playing a game on my phone. Now, the game that I'm playing right now is Paradise Pause, and it suits me quite well because you don't need any Wi-Fi to play it. And I generally don't have that around the farm. So this is kind of a puzzle game where you combine 3 of the same things to something new and better. You can also rescue animals along the way, and by feeding them fruits and berries, they will produce suns that will help you restore pieces of the island. So this is my level 3 squirrel called Henry. Now, he wants me to pick some mushrooms for him, and luckily I have a special mushroom tree. So the game starts by introducing Natalie and Lizzie, whose boat crash upon a mystery island. Now there's something strange going on this island, and you will uncover more of the stories by unlocking new sections of the island as you go. So one of the best things about this game is that it's completely free to download, and is also ad-free. Now you will always advance when you play, because there is no dead ends in this game. Now if you are amongst the first 100 to download the game from the QR code on the screen or the link in the description, you will get a special gift. This baby penguin will help you gather resources and advance faster in levels, and he will also be named after our channel, so don't miss out. So let me know in the comments below what animals you rescued first. And now, let's get back to the car. So we managed to get the car back out without scratching it up, so it's time to weigh our options. Of course I could just work outside, but I did flip through the workshop manual, and the subframe job would take a professional mechanic more than 1 day. And I am certainly no professional mechanic, so if I can even do this, my guess would be at least a week. So where we live in Norway, it rains a lot, and I don't want to end up with the engine dangling halfway out of the engine while it rains and I have to stop and everything's just chaos. So the conclusion is the car is going to go in here, and that means making a wider gate. And we can actually take off quite a bit here before the concrete pillar would be in the way. So let's get started. Now that certainly took a lot more time than I expected, but finally the car is in the building and we can start. Now the big question is, where do we start? Now it could be really tempting to start with something that at least seems a bit simpler, like the brakes, but I've been reading a bit in the workshop manual and I've decided to start with the worst thing. We will start with the frame, or should we say the frame of doom. I've been dreading this for a long time. Now the reason we will start with the frame is because I've been reading a bit and it looks like we need to take off a lot of parts, which we also will be working on. But the very first thing we need to do is to read. And there it is. Look at that. 4 out of 5. And this is the meaning difficult. Suitable for experienced DIY mechanics, which I'm certainly not. Jack up the front and rear of the car and support it securely on an axle stand. Okay, I can do that. Preferably position the car over an inspection pit or a lift. I don't have any of those. The help of an assistant will be needed for this procedure. Can I use the cat? Alright, we will anyways start by jacking up the car. At least I can do that. So the car is off the ground, and it seems like the next step is to lock the steering wheel in a straightforward position. I think this should be straightforward. Okay, remove the ignition key, then, okay, it's locked. So the next step is to remove the engine under tray. So we will need to get under the car. I think this have seen better days. If we manage to repair the car, we should probably buy a new one. This is all cracked and broken. Of course, the big question now is, what is the next step? Let's see. It seems like the next thing we need to do is actually to remove the entire front bumper. So let's get to it. I think I used about an hour removing these 3 screws from the other side because they are completely rotten. And in the end, I almost had to light the car on fire. Of course, this is just plastic, so it burns. It's morning, it's the second day, and I really didn't feel like we got anything done yesterday. So the next step is to remove the bumper, and according to the manual, there are 2 screws under here, which I need to loosen, but they are really rusty, and so I think I need to get the impact wrench on them. But of course, there isn't enough room for that, so we need to get creative. I've bought some swivel joints in different sizes in the hopes that at least these can help me. So we got the front off in the end, but of course I had to cut some bolts, which I think would be the first of many. So this is the bracket the radiator is leaning on, and it seems to be completely cracked. Looks like the entire radiator is sitting way too low. Now of course the other side as well seems to be completely broken. And also I'm wondering if the radiator itself is leaking some sort of fluid. It looks completely wet here. I think I better secure this because the entire radiator is actually completely loose. I think it's just hanging from the hoses. Obviously we need to fix this, so new radiator brackets will need to go on the shopping list. And I must say, I'm kind of regretting taking on this car. This was truly a big can of worms. But I have to commit now. We have gotten this far, so we will just have to continue and see what else we find. It seems like the next step is to disconnect the steering gear pinion, whatever that is. So the steering column has been disconnected, and the big question is, what's next? Oh no. It seems like I need to remove, which looks like most of the exhaust system. I think I can bring this with me right away because it would be a miracle to get some of those bolts up. So we finally got most of the exhaust off, and this was actually not as bad as I expected. The thing that actually took the most time was to disconnect this, because it was so difficult to see how this plug worked. And of course, I missed this in the beginning, which meant that this has been dangling from the wire for quite some time. And I think that means that we should probably swap this out for a new one. And when it comes to this part, it actually just broke cleanly off. And as you can see, this is really bad. Now, I did actually tinker a bit with cars when I was younger, and I remember buying this. It's a socket set for removing sensors like this. So let's see if this one actually works. At least it worked, but it also smacked my hand up really badly when it started flying around, and also I broke the plug, so now we at least need to buy a new one. So the exhaust is out of the way, and then the big question is, what's the next step? So when I read the next chapters here, I just feel like a fish out of water. This is just way over my head. But I think the important things here is to just take it step by step and not get overwhelmed by everything that needs to be done. Just take one step at a time. At least it has brought us so far. Now it seems like the next step is to secure the radiator from falling. And since the radiator was already loose and about to fall, I think we have already done that. Now the manual is starting to talk about loosening bolts from the engine mounts, but it says nothing about having to secure the engine. It does also seem like the engine is resting on the upper part of the frame. I'm so glad now that we took the time to get the car inside. Now I flipped through the pages many times, and it doesn't say anything about having to remove the engine while we remove the subframe. It does seem like it has some upper mounts, but then again, I just really don't want to get the engine in the face while I'm down there. So it would be quite tempting to actually secure this a bit. Now I read the procedure on how to remove the engine, and it is as I expected. This is the engine mount, and it is another one on the other side, and that's actually what's holding the engine. And the things that are holding it to the frames are called a torque mount or something like that, and I think that's to keep the engine from twisting when you rev it. And while we were buying tools for this job, I did actually also buy a workshop crane, because I thought I would need to support the engine. It could be really tempting to use this anyways, to secure the engine, to make sure I don't get it in the head. But these feet takes up a lot of space under the car, and I need that space. So I do feel a little better about continuing now. This pulley can take about 1 ton of force. I doubt the engine is that heavy because the entire car is about 1.2 tons. Now, how much the roof can take, I have no idea. But I think at least if the engine will start to sag or fall, I will have some time now to get out. So I think it's as safe as it can be to continue. Now, according to the book, the next thing we need to do is start to disconnect the frame from the wheels. According to the book, we need to disconnect the steering column. Now I'm having a problem here. This screw is just spinning around. It looks like I need to get something on it. Let's see if there is room for a key. Yeah, there we go. Now we just need to go and do the other side. This one is of course different on the other side. It does not have the hex pattern on the back side, so there's nothing there to grip onto. What it does have is a Torx pattern in the front. So this didn't work. I completely stripped out the Torx head. This is quite a rotten part. I think we need to replace it anyways. I've been struggling to get this arm out of the wheel hub for I think about an hour now, and it's just not happening. I don't think it's stuck, because if I use the crowbar it starts to slip out, but as soon as I let go it just seems to spring right back in. So I'm starting to believe that perhaps this shock absorber or whatever this is does not allow this arm to swivel down any further. So if I'm right, this is not a problem. Once we start to lower the frame it will just slip out, but we will need to pay attention that that actually does happen. Now it's not many steps left now before we can start to lower the frame, but one of them is to check that we have disconnected all the wire harnesses that is going down with the frame. So let's do that. So today is the day that we are finally going to drop the frame. Or at least I hope it's today, because this project is taking so much more time than I anticipated. But according to the manual, there is one more thing that we need to do. Now the professional workshops have something called an alignment tool, which they use to make sure that the new frame goes into the exact same position as the old one. Of course, I don't have this tool, but these books contain a recipe on how to make one. So we will start by doing that. So according to the recipe, I need a piece of steel that is long enough to reach from the 12mm hole on the side of the subframe. I need to measure diagonally to the 24mm hole near the front exhaust support. On the project car, for the people that made this, that was 93.5mm. I think perhaps I need to go under the car and measure before I start cutting, because it would be bad if I cut it too short. So to make sure that I use the correct hole, that sounds a bit wrong, but you know what I mean. The car. So the tool is made, I've tested it, and it does really fit. And so that fits with how everything is set in this car right now. And if We use this and we measure up before we tighten the bolt on the new frame diagonally both ways. Then the new frame should be in the exact same position as the old one. So the next step in the book is to secure the frame with a jack or a crib and then start undoing bolts. So I only have this one jack, and the frame now is really heavy because it's still a lot of equipment on it, like the servo engine and everything else which we need to take off afterwards. So I think we need to make some sort of crib or something that we can fasten to this jack so we have a bit more control. So I think this is it. According to the manual now, we only need to remove 4 bolts and we should be able to lower the frame. Now, although the jack should support the frame, it's really important that I'm not under the frame when I'm loosening the bolts. Of course it couldn't be that easy. This last bolt, I can't get it off. It's just spinning around in here. I think it may be a nut or something which has broken off in here. And of course I have no idea how I would even get a tool in here to hold it, because there isn't really any room here. I've also lowered the frame a bit, but these arms are still not coming out, so I'll try to yank on them a bit and see if we can actually free this now. The frame itself is mostly free. Both of the arms are off, and the only thing holding it now is this. If there were any wiring harnesses, I probably snapped them because a little bit too much twist on the wrist, and you know, most of it came down, so we need to get this off. I think the only thing I can do is trying to remove this box here, because there is a hole here, but the box is in the way, and perhaps I can get a tool in there if I get this off. This is a big problem. I cannot get this bolt out of here. There is some sort of nut in here which is held by 2 braces on each side, but the problem is that the nut is completely rounded and nothing is holding it, so it's just spinning around. I could cut the bolt, but the opening in here is so small that I don't think I would get the nut and the bolt traces out of there if I did that. I could possibly get my welder and try to tack the round nut in place and have another go. Now we need to find a ground. I don't want to use the car because I don't want to strip any paint anywhere. I don't need any more rust. I could use the frame. The problem is that there is some sort of rubber insert and the bolt goes into that. And I don't even know if it has any connection with the actual frame. But I could actually just use the bolt. Well, that should be a good enough ground. I've always heard that if you're going to weld on a car, you need to disconnect the battery so you don't fry the electronics. And I have disconnected the ground. I think I will disconnect it as well. It would be stupid to destroy the car even more. Okay, I'll put this one under so I'm sure it's not connected. Now the problem here is I will not be able to see anything of what I'm doing because there is so little room here. I will just need to put the welding gun in here and push and hope that it sticks. But we will see. Now, a lot of times you feel like when you take in a car for a check like this, that they are just trying to sell you stuff and that they are being too harsh, but not in this case. This car, I totally agree, it should not be road legal. Especially here where we fasten the wheels. This is falling off in big chunks. You know, one big bump and this entire thing could just break off and the wheel would go like, that would be really bad. But anyways, this is a huge milestone. The frame is out. And of course the big question is, can we get everything back together? And of course there's also a lot of things which we haven't touched yet. Like the brakes, like the exhaust we broke off. We need to fix the rest of that. This is going to be a long one. The frame is out and the next point in the manual is to transfer everything over to the new frame. Although I'm not sure if everything can be reused. This for instance seems really wobbly. I don't think this is good anymore. And this seems to be some sort of sensor, but what's holding it is so rusty that I can't identify it anymore. So we may need to break this off. I don't know if you can get this off in one piece. But I think we'll just have to start and see how it goes. This sensor isn't coming off, so I hope it wasn't expensive because we need to break this up. And there it is, the main reason our car did not pass the road inspection test. And to be fair, I totally agree with them. This is completely awful, especially this side where it's several holes into the frame and it's actually filled with gravel and dirt. And it shouldn't be that. And let's just say, I don't think it comes like that from the factories. And my intentions were, of course, to take everything apart, fix everything and put it back together all within one video. But of course, this is taking way longer than I anticipated, as it always does. And that means this will not just be one video, this will be at least two, and maybe more. And when the next video is finished, I will link it in the description field and put it up on end screen here. But until then, check out this video if you want to see some more mechanic work when we did some serious maintenance on our tractor.